Alright, welcome everyone, Mark Sargent again, and we will follow our UV tutorial series with a book cover tutorial. But first, right now, we only have a simple box. So we just have to model a tiny bit to get to a book cover, a book-like shape. So if you take a look at the parameters in the modifier panel, we have a length value 3, the width is 15, and 22 is the actual height. So just look for a good proportion for your book. You don't have to be absolutely specific. These are just guideline values. Now I will press a right click and convert it to an editable poly because what we need is polygonal modeling. The polygons will be selected at the top, aside, and at the bottom. So as you see, this area will be the paper area. This area outside will be the cover area. Now up next, we will use an inset with a setting. This can increase or decrease by duplicating the selected polygons and creating these nice little thickness. So let me convert and switch to a different color. Now you see we have some kind of a thickness. The value in centimeters, I'm working in centimeters, is 0.26. And okay, that is fine. It's not the thinnest book, but at least it will be visible and easy to work with. We are not ready yet. What you have to do is extrude it inwards. But extrusion by default tries to extrude the whole as a group. So from this option, I will switch to local normal, and this is quite nice. The only issue is the opposite. The direction is the opposite. So what we need here is to reduce it slightly, and voila, here we go. This is what we have. It's a nice basic book that we created. To add some realism to this, I will create a spine to the book, and that will be a little bit rounded. Now to do that easily, I will select the edge, this edge, and by pressing Alt R, the ring will be performed, and when I have the ring, I can add a couple edges with a connection, so that will be 2. It will be just fine. Now accepting this one and going to the top view, going to subobject level 1, now there's some kind of a little roundness here, and to make it even better, we can round this a bit. So I'm selecting this edge and this one. So now we have the two sides selected. I'm pressing Alt L. That selects the loop. So here we go. This is the same. If you click on this loop, that's actually the same. Right click and chamfering it. That's way too much. We don't need that much. And a couple segments here and there. Number 2, maybe 3. Okay, it's nice and rounded. Alright, that's fine. Now, of course, you can add more and more details, but it is enough for a good start. Let's rename it to book, and now we have what's up next. Of course, we want to test how the texture fits. So material editor is opening up. In the diffuse channel, I'm loading my usual UV checker map, drop it on to the model, make it visible in the viewport, and see what happens. We have a nice cover, but everywhere else, this texture is heavily distorted. This is heavily distorted. So it's not really working for us. Now what to do, we have to create a layout with the UVW map. First of all, here comes something that often confuses people. Please, let me show this by demonstrating. So sit back, just watch it. I'm clicking on a polygon and select a polygon. This means I have an active subobject, editable poly is here, subobject is activated, and this little icon indicates that we have an activated subobject is running. So when you are using a UVW unwrap, so unwrap UVW, now what happens? This UVW unwrap respects the hierarchy, so the actual modifier is only connected to the polygon that we previously selected. Now this is happening if you are not leaving subobject mode before you are applying a UVW map modifier, unwrap modifier. The problem is unwrap UVW heavily modifies the structure of your file. So it, it simply does not allow to really change anything once it is used. So what do I mean? If you try to go back to the polygon level, you will receive a warning message. Alright? You can press on hold and try to modify the things, but it's not really working this way. So in this case, you have to go to No, go up and delete and leave it and go to the editable poly and close. There is no icon here, there is no subobject activated, and now go to the unwrap modifier and apply it. And as you see, even if we have a polygon that previously was selected, the subobject mode is not activated there. Alright, now open up UV editor and take a look what happens here. This is the typical situation when you are dealing with texturing an object. You have some kind of a complex shape. It's not that complex, but there is some complexity. And it's really hard to recognize which face is which and why these are oriented this way. So what you have to do, because it's everything is overlapping, you have to follow the basic guideline that I previously presented. So we want to create selections, use the quick map, and arrange them around just to recognize which phase belongs to what coordinates. So we have to build up kind of a plan to deal with this. The only issue is if I'm turning on F4 to make the edges visible, that we have much more polygons than previously. And it's pretty hard to select everything. Now, to make it easier, take a look at here at the All IDs section in the UV editor. If you roll this out, it will show something it could be quite interesting at first. We have polygon IDs. These polygon IDs are like names for the polygons or addresses for the polygons. So the benefit of this, one ID can contain a set of polygons. So if I'm clicking on a 1 and I'm selecting everything that belongs to 1, it is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 polygons, and even more here. So it's somewhere around 20 polygons right now, and all these are belonging to the into the ID 1. If you're selecting 2, now 2 is this part at the bottom. Is it actually helpful for us? It will be, but in this form, it is not. We have 6 groups, but actually, we need only 2 groups. Okay, why do we need 2 groups? Because we have a book cover that's coming from behind to the side and to the front, and we have the other part, and that is actually the paper inside the book. So we just have to overwrite these and make a unique grouping about with the material IDs. So in this right side, we have material IDs adjustment panel. So what you have to do, and the easiest way to do this, if you're selecting everything and telling the software that, all right, start with a blank paper and we need only one group as a whole, because later on it's much easier to select a couple polygons for paper and change the material ID. So at the start, it's the best if you just set everything to ID 1. The problem is if you're dragging a window, that's not selecting the back-facing polygons by default. So if something is not visible for the camera, that won't be selected. This happening because by default the select by ignore back-facing is turned on. I don't know what's the reason for this, but you don't forget, if you are just dragging a window, it's not selecting all the polygons. If you turn this off, now you can select all the polygons easily. But if you forget it, the easiest way to make sure that everything is selected and you don't make any errors with the selections, because right now it's important that you have to select everything, just press Ctrl A. Just like in Word, select everything, and text, Ctrl A is working here as well. Now, moving back to the material ID, and because we have multiple IDs, there is no any kind of a guess. The software doesn't know what is the general ID, so we will overwrite it to 1. Now everything is ID 1, so if you select a polygon anywhere, it will tell that, okay, this is ID 1. If you click on ID 1 select ID, everything will be selected. And this will be the first part, and the second part is to select just the paper related polygons. So this is actually only 9 polygon because it's this little edge belongs to the cover. So I'm selecting these and set ID to number 2. Okay, now what happens in the editor, now I can roll out the old ID number 1, and if I'm selecting number 1, I can move it away, and number 2, I can select number 2 and move it away. Now what happened? What's the problem? I will undo and explain what we just did. When you have objects in the UV editor, most of these objects are welded. So that means you have to tear apart the model. We already used the quick planner map, and quick planner map created us a good first planner map, a good oriented texture. But when you are doing that, it is doing something else as well. Just let me show it. All IDs turned on, so we have number 2 and number 1. I've previously selected only the 2, so 2 is active, selecting the 2. Now going back all ID, it will show up the number 1 ID polygons as well behind this selection. And when I'm dragging this and moving this away, the connection is still existing. Now if I'm turning it back, going to the window, and usually this is what we start, so automatically when you have a selection of polygons, you're just hitting this planner map in most of the cases, because it will create a quick orientation of the texture, and instantly it will also break the connections from the original part. So we have this connection broken, the planner map is there, and because we have still this selection running, what we can do is we can run our relax instantly. Now take a look. Right click, relax. I'm opening up the relax dialog, and starting relax will actually flatten out the stuff, and now we have all the polygons visible. So we have all the 9, And if it's not updating, I will just close this window, move it away, move it again, or slightly move it here. Now, okay, so the window is updating here. We have the polygons. Don't forget, when you're moving away this item, you have to select everything, because otherwise there will be a distortion. Now moving everything away. Okay, so the hardest part is done. What to do next? Here's the rest of the polygons. I'm selecting the rest of the polygons. It's pretty easy here. Why? Because I already separated my model of the papers in the UV editor, so I have everything that relates to the book cover. And don't have to select everything one by one. It is pretty easy because I can use the select ID as well. So just select one polygon, that's ID 1, select everything. Now everything is selected. How to create a flattened texture to this book cover? Uh, you need to ask for the help like an iron. So we want to ironing out, we want to unfold this particular bookcase. And to do that, there is a special feature called Pelt. Now, Pelt belongs to the peeling processes, and when you are starting Pelt, you have to have a selection, and usually it's good if you just have a quick planner map. The quick planner map just resets your stuff. As you see, if I'm pressing Ctrl Z, you will see the difference again. So now you have these running, separating open edges of UVs. Remember, every time you see these green highlighted edges, that means there is a polygon cluster, and the polygon cluster will break up uh, the polygons and the UVs. So right now, because I have this polygon, and this polygon is actually uh, surrounded by these opening edges, I can move it away. But when I'm selecting this polygon has two neighboring edges here in this corner. One is a green one, but the other one, if I click in away, is a white one. So when I'm selecting this polygon, it's not an entire cluster, and it will grab and move the edges with it. So what we have to do, we have to get rid of these uh, clustering setup. And when you are selecting the ID and using the quick planner map is not just looking for the most optimal average projection, but it is also looking for cleaning up the clusters. So when I'm hitting the planner map, those greens will disappear, and the only green edges will be those edges that are actually on the border of the paper and the meeting point of the paper and the cover. So now we have it. Don't be surprised. This becomes something tiny because we are making our projections from this angle. So this side is just smoothed out, so it's like a strong motion blur. So as you see, there's a number and everything is blurred out. Okay, so we have this initial set, and now we are going to the peel and going to the Pelt map. And when I'm clicking on a Pelt map, something strange will happen. Now this model is acting a little bit weird. There's a frame around. That frame will be some kind of a stretch pad. So the stretch pad holds a couple of springs. The red ones, the red lines, are representing these springs. When I will start pelting, these springs will start pulling the vertices towards this frame. So if I'm clicking on it, just please take a look. Actually, I can stop. What happened right now? this whole outer shell was just turned inside out, and was stretched and pulled away. Is it ready yet? No, it's not ready yet. It's just the first step. Right now we have the fundamentals. What we have to do next is to utilize the relax tool, and the relax tool will give us the final form, closer final form of this book cover. So I will hit start relax, and now it's easy to recognize, and even in the viewport it will be something that we are looking for. And because it is angled in space, the texture will be also angled, but nothing is distorted. How cool is that? Okay, now I'll go on a commit and take a look what we just did. To rotate, holding down control by 5 degrees, and control again, and we'll move it here to the center, and this will be my book cover. Now look around the edges. What happened? At the edges we have a tiny problem. The tiny problem comes from overlapping. Uh, Usually if you want to troubleshoot, you have to follow these green edges. Green edges, as I already told so, these are outline edges. Now outline edges has the property they are always on the border of the cluster. So if this kind of green edge is not running outside the cluster, for example here, that could be a problem. Ideally, it looks like something like this. Okay, so when you have an issue like this one, you have to select these and move them outside. Now this is quite a tedious work, and sometimes it's just it gives no perfect results, because as you see there is some kind of an angle here, so it is not working perfectly. And also we have overlapping edges here. Oh, what a mess. We have to clean this up, and if you don't want to do it manually, you have to do one more step. uh, this step is using seams. Now when you have seams, you can activate them. Right in the pelt area there is an active edit seams. You want to add a couple seams at the corners. This will tell to the modifier, I'm sorry, to the pelt map, that the pelt with its red springs, the pelt can open up and should open up at these seams. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not that. I'll select this one. Okay, so this is all of these corners are turned to blue. I don't have to deal with this area because it will be automatically opened up. There is no problem. But here, because there's an underturn, I need to define these seams. So now I have the seams. I will go to the polygons, select these polygons again, so it's the entire book, but right now the pelt will be different. Now take a look, pelt map, start pelting, and as you see, it opens up entirely, and these edges are split by us right now. And when you're starting with the relax, relax can do a much better and much more accurate job. Alright, now it's still not perfect, but it's really close, so we will deal with this. Just take a look at the relax settings. Probably if I switch to edge angles, what happens? It's not working that way. So I will clip it to polygon, relax, right. Commit. So here we go. This is ready. Use our rotation tool, 5-degree increments. Use the control and scale it down. move it to the center, and voila, here we go. We have the basic outline of the book. And to make sure everything is super duper fine, we will select edges, select this particular one, and move it to the side. I'm holding down the shift key, and shift key helps me to move this correctly horizontally. So I will just select these and make them sure that everything is nice and tidy. Same here. Okay, so I will just select this one and move it away a bit. So this will reduce the stretch. Which one was it? Okay, side and side. So here we go. This is what we have. V4 and V5. Now it's done. And voila, here it is. Where's our inside? This is the inside, so I will move it away because this is our work area. So everything has to be organized into this work area. If you don't want to use the rotation tool because it's so small, you can use the quick transformation by rotate -90, and it's too large, so I will use the scale. Okay, and this will be the paper part. All right, now the next part will be the Photoshop work. So that's just a couple things to prepare. So I will render this out. File, tools, and render UV template. And render UV template is 1000. Now it will change. I need to change it to a high one. So it's usually the power of 2. So 2048 and 2048. So it's a power of 2. So it's square. And render UV template. Here's the UV template. Saving it, and that will be book UV temp JPEG, and closing this one, and close. Now we have it. Opening up shop, creating the book. I already had a prepared book title cover, so I will just press simple V to transfer this to the other side. I'll close this one, and F to frame. No, not this time because the video. So I will just transform it, make it smaller, make it fit. All right. Don't forget we have this trick selecting the UV template, Ctrl J to duplicate it, move it to the top, and switch to difference. And now we have this area, and actually I'm pretty satisfied. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. So I will go to the layer and move it away. That will be fine. The only thing that I'm worried is we need to create some kind of a page here, and I don't have the texture, so quickly I will create a selection by using the rectangle marquee. There's the selection, and this is the active layer now. So I want to create my new layer on top of this by using an adjustment layer, a solid color, and a solid color that will be kind of a little bit of a yellowish, reddish paper. I will select this one, and if I have a new layer on top of this using a brush, creating a couple points. Oh, it's kind of weird with this color. No, I don't want to do this. Sorry, switching to black. And I will stretch this one by using filter, blur, and there's a motion blur, and I will motion blur to 0 degree, and distance is absolutely the max. It's too much, so I will reduce it. Okay, Control T, transform, so I'll stretch it out to make it fit. And duplicate it by Ctrl J, moving it to the top a bit, and duplicating it, merging down, Ctrl E, duplicated, Ctrl J again. Okay, Ctrl E. So now it's pretty much fine as the initial stuff. Okay, so this will be saved. Ctrl Shift and S, and that will be book UV temp PSD. All right, clicking OK, switching back to 3dsmax, opening up material editor, new material, drag and drop it onto the model, and diffuse color. We need a texture information, so channels opened up, bitmap, in book UV temp open. I will accept layers and make it visible, and voila, we have the book title F4 wireframe turned off. So we have a front and a back, we have the pages here, and of course you can add more details, but now you are done with the basic book covering. To create a quick render, Ctrl Q, um, I'm sorry, Shift Q will create a quick render. So now we have a quick render, Shift Q. And even the inside is textured, so you can actually look for the details inside. So everything is matching and perfectly aligned. Thank you very much. The next will be a bit more complicated with much different forms than these blocks, but using the same principles. Thank you very much. See you next time. Goodbye.